All right, welcome to another deep dive. You guys sent in a study in Scarlet, the very first Sherlock Holmes novel.
Oh, a classic.
And we are ready to dive into it. Now,
That's a good one.
yeah. This book's kind of like a two-sided coin, right? You've got this classic London mystery in part one, and then you go on this wild journey to the American West in part two.
It is a bit of a jarring shift.
It is.
But it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be exploring both of those parts and really kind of seeing how those two worlds come together and what makes this book such a captivating read, even after all these years.
Well, it's interesting because Doyle sets up that duality right from the start.
Yeah.
You're introduced to Sherlock Holmes through the eyes of Dr. Watson, a war veteran who's kind of searching for his purpose back in London.
Right.
And it's this contrast between logic and emotion, order and chaos that really drives the narrative forward.
Right. And so we first meet Watson. He's kind of wandering around London, injured from the Afghan war.
Yeah.
And he bumps into this old acquaintance, Stamford, who mentions this peculiar chap who's looking for a roommate. And he even says these warnings, like, he's a little queer in his ideas.
Yeah, a little eccentric.
Which, I mean, instantly piques our curiosity.
Of course.
Who wouldn't be intrigued?
Immediately.
Yeah. And then we have that first encounter in the laboratory with Holmes, and he's practically bouncing off the walls with excitement over this new blood test.
Oh, he loves his science.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, much so.
He does, yeah. And it's such a small detail, but it reveals so much about him.
Absolutely.
Like his passion for science and like almost obsessive focus on the practical, right?
It has to have a use.
Yeah.
He's not interested in anything else.
Exactly. And then, boom, he looks at Watson
Yeah.
and deduces his entire backstory.
Right out of the gate.
I know. The war, the injury, the fact that he was in Afghanistan. And Watson's just floored.
Well, yeah. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Totally, yeah. But this scene's not just showing off Holmes's genius.
No.
It's really laying the foundation for their unique relationship.
It is. It's the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Exactly. Yeah, and Watson really becomes our window
Yes.
into Holmes's world.
He's the everyman.
Yeah.
He's us.
Yes, totally.
You know, looking at this and going, wow, how'd he do that?
Exactly, yeah. And we see the magic of deduction unfold, through his eyes. But it's not really magic, is it?
No.
Doyle takes great care to show that it's all based on observation and logic.
Exactly. He is very methodical.
Yeah.
It's not supernatural. It's all very, very, based on what he sees.
Right. And remember that scene where Watson dismisses that article on deduction as twaddle?
Yeah. He thinks it's nonsense.
Yeah. And Holmes playfully chides him, right?
Oh, of course.
And explains how the key is to observe these seemingly insignificant details.
Yes. That others would just overlook.
Yeah. Which brings us to that first case.
Oh, yeah.
The Lauriston Garden mystery. So we've got a man found dead, a cryptic message on the wall, and Scotland Yard completely baffled.
They don't know what to make of it at all.
They don't. Enter Sherlock Holmes,
Ta-da!
the ultimate puzzle solver.
He's going to figure it out.
He is. What's so striking here is the contrast between Holmes's very methodical approach and the more traditional methods of Lestrade and Gregson.
Right? Good old Scotland Yard?
Yeah, the Scotland Yard detectives. They're fixated on these obvious clues, like the word RC written on the wall.
Right, they think it's a woman's name.
Yeah, they're assuming it must be a woman. But Holmes, he notices the gray dust, the position of the body, these subtle signs.
Of things that nobody else would even think to look at or even notice.
Yeah. He even sniffs the dead man's lips.
Oh, yeah.
The disgust of everyone else.
He's got to get all the sensory information.
He does.
But he can.
That's Holmes for you. He's not afraid to get in there.
Oop, not at all.
And examine every little detail, and then with that dramatic flair
of course,
that only Holmes can pull off.
It's essential to the character.
Yeah, he declares poison.
Yep.
And Rosh is German for revenge. I mean, chills, right?
Yeah, it's just brilliant.
He's already miles ahead of the police at this point.
Oh, absolutely. He's playing a completely different game.
Yeah, he is.
Than they are.
And this is where Doyle establishes him as this master of deduction.
Oh, absolutely. It's the setup for everything to come.
Right, yeah.
It shows you exactly what he's capable of.
Yeah. So he observes, he analyzes, and then just like a conductor leading an orchestra, he pieces together these scattered clues into this narrative,
It all comes together.
It does.
Yeah.
He deduces the murderer's height, age, even the fact that he returned to the scene, just from these little traces. It's just brilliant.
It's like watching a chess grandmaster.
It is.
Several moves ahead of everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can see his mind at work, you know?
Oh, yeah.
When he interviews witnesses like John Rance, the constable, the way he casually drops these bombshells of deduction and leaves everyone speechless.
Because nobody else can follow what he's doing.
I know. It's just great. And then we have the visit to Mrs. Sawyer.
Oh, yes.
Remember how he immediately connects her to the case because of that missing wedding ring?
And she's like, how did you know that?
I know, it's so good. And then this leads to this exhilarating chase through the streets of London with Holmes hot on the trail of the murderer.
You can practically hear the hansom cabs clattering over the cobblestones.
Yes, exactly. And finally, you have the confrontation with Jefferson Hope.
The man behind it all.
Yes. And here's where the story takes this dramatic turn.
Yes.
As Hope reveals his motive, which is this tale of love, betrayal, and a thirst for revenge that stretches all the way back to the American West.
Which is where we're going.
Exactly. Suddenly, this seemingly straightforward London mystery explodes into something much bigger. It just opens up this whole other world.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And we learned about Hope's meticulous planning.
He's a very determined fellow.
He is, yeah. And the poison pills, that racy inscription.
His final act of defiance.
It is, yeah. And as Hope tells his story, this new layer of complexity unfolds, right?
Absolutely.
And that's where we're going to shift gears and dive into part 2.
That's right.
But before we do, I'm curious.
Yes.
What are your initial impressions of Sherlock Holmes at this point? Is he a brilliant eccentric?
Yeah.
Or a cold calculating machine? What do you think?
Well, that's a great question. He's a bit of both, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's that incredible intellect and that laser focus, but there's also that detachment.
Yeah.
That lack of empathy almost.
Right.
It's a fascinating combination.
Yeah, it is. And it makes you wonder, what drives him?
Exactly.
Is it just the puzzle? Or is there something more?
We'll have to keep reading to find out.
Exactly. So hold on to those thoughts.
As we journey to a very different world in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
Me too.
Let's go.
Okay. All right, so we're leaving those gaslit streets of London behind us and heading out to this vast, unforgiving landscape of the American West.
Quite a change of scenery.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like stepping into a whole other novel.
It really is.
Yeah. And part 2, The Country of the Saints.
Oh, yes.
Plunges us right into this world of Mormon pioneers, desperate journeys, and this love story that just ends in tragedy.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It is. It is. And the shift is so jarring, but it's so brilliantly done.
I think it's intentional.
Yeah.
You know, Doyle's not just changing the scenery.
Right.
He's transporting us to another time, another culture, another way of life.
Yeah, and it really highlights that theme of duality, right?
Absolutely.
Like runs throughout the book.
Yeah, London versus the West, logic versus emotion, justice versus revenge.
Exactly, yeah. And so we are introduced to John Ferrier and Lucy.
The lost souls.
They are on the brink of death.
Yeah, they're in bad shape.
They're rescued by this Mormon wagon train.
Crossing the desolate alkali plains.
I know, imagine that, right?
Oh, it's brutal.
Scorching sun, endless dust.
Yeah.
And suddenly this lifeline appears.
Yeah, talk about a contrast.
I know it is.
With London,
yeah,
where it's all fog and cobblestones.
Yeah, exactly. But this rescue comes at a price.
There's always a price.
Yeah, and that's the acceptance of the Mormon faith.
Right, they have to convert to join the community.
And Ferrier, he's so grateful for their salvation.
Yeah, he's desperate.
That he agrees to the terms, but you can just sense this unease in him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He's a man of independent spirit, used to doing things his own way.
He's not a follower.
Right.
He's a leader.
Yeah, and these strict rules of Mormon society.
Particularly about marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just rub him the wrong way.
Oh, he's definitely chafing under those restrictions.
Yes, and this is where those seeds of conflict are sown, right?
Absolutely.
So Lucy, she's now Ferrier's adopted daughter.
Right.
She grows into this strong, independent young woman.
Yeah, a real spitfire.
She is. She's a skilled writer, comfortable in this rugged terrain.
Yeah.
And her spirit of freedom just clashes with these confines of the Mormon community.
She's not meant for that life.
No, she's not. And then enters Jefferson Hope.
Our dashing young hunter.
Yes.
Who rescues Lucy from this stampeding herd of cattle.
It's such a classic scene.
Oh, right out of a Western.
I know. But it's also that spark, right?
Yeah.
that ignites this forbidden romance.
Oh, absolutely. The chemistry is undeniable.
Yeah. Hope represents everything that those young Mormon men don't.
Yeah, adventure, worldliness, a life beyond the valley.
Exactly. No wonder Lucy falls for him.
Well, who wouldn't?
Right. Their love story is passionate, intense.
But doomed.
But doomed from the start.
Right from the get-go.
Yeah. The Mormon elders, particularly Brigham Young.
Oh, yes, the big man himself.
Yes. They have other plans for Lucy.
They want her to marry within the faith.
Right. And when Ferrier resists, Young issues this chilling warning.
It sends shivers down your spine.
It does. He says, and I'm quoting here, "It were better for you that you and she were now lying blanched skeletons upon the Sierra Blanco than that you should put your weak wills against the orders of the Holy Four."
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
Intense, right?
You could practically feel the weight of his authority.
Yes, you can. This is a man who holds absolute power.
Oh, yeah, he's not messing around.
Within this Mormon community.
No.
And he's not afraid to use it.
Not at all.
And the scene is so crucial.
It really is.
Because it highlights this clash between individual freedom and religious authority.
Yeah, that's the core conflict of this whole section.
Yeah, it is. Ferrier, realizing the danger, he hatches this desperate plan.
To escape.
To escape with Lucy.
And Hope helps them.
With Hope's help, yeah. And that escape? Talk about a nail-biter.
Oh, it's edge-of-your-seat stuff.
Racing through this treacherous mountain pass.
Pursued by the avenging angels.
I know.
Mormon enforcers.
It's a race against time, a fight for survival.
Talk about high stakes.
I know. But just when they think they've made it, they stumble upon this freshly dug grave.
With John Ferrier carved on the headstone.
Ugh. Chilling, right?
Oh, it's a gut punch.
It is. It's this stark reminder that they may have escaped the valley, but they're not free from Young's reach.
No, his influence extends far beyond the valley.
Yeah. And this event just shatters Hope, leaving him consumed by grief and this burning desire for revenge.
Understandable, in a way.
Yeah, he loses everything.
The woman he loves, her father, the life he dreamed of building with them.
It's this profound sense of loss that drives him to dedicate his life to seeking retribution.
Against those he holds responsible.
Exactly, yeah. And so he disappears into the vastness of the American West.
Vanishes without a trace.
I know, only to resurface years later.
Back in London.
Back in London, transformed into this cold, calculating avenger.
The man we met in part 1.
Yes, bringing us right back to the beginning.
Full circle.
To that fog-shrouded London street and that mystery of the poisoned pill.
And the question of why.
Exactly. Doyle so masterfully weaves together these two seemingly disparate narratives.
He's a genius. At plotting.
He is. And it just shows how these past traumas can ripple across continents and time, right?
Yeah, they have far-reaching consequences.
Leading to these unforeseen consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so here's where it gets really intriguing.
Okay, I'm listening.
Was Hope justified in his actions?
That's a tough one.
Right. Was this frontier justice? Or was it something much darker?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's still go to those questions as we unpack this final act of the story in part 3.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
Me too. Okay, so we've journeyed from the streets of London to the plains of the American West, and now we come full circle back to Jefferson Hope and his revenge.
Yeah, it's time to face the music.
It is. But as we delve into his motives, we have to confront some uncomfortable questions.
Right, like, was he a righteous avenger righting a terrible wrong? Or was he a cold-blooded killer?
Right.
Taking the law into his own hands?
Yeah, and that's the brilliance of Doyle, right?
Absolutely.
He doesn't give us easy answers.
Nope.
Hope is such a complex character.
He really is.
Driven by love and loss and this thirst for justice that just twists into something much darker.
It's a slippery slope.
It is. We can empathize with his pain, the injustice he suffered.
Yeah.
But his methods are brutal, calculated.
Yeah, there's no denying that.
Chilling.
And it makes you question the whole idea of revenge.
It does. Remember how he made Drebber and Stangerson choose between those poison pills?
Oh, yeah, that was cold.
It wasn't just about taking their lives. It was about tormenting them, making them relive that terror.
Yeah, he wanted them to suffer.
That they inflicted on Lucy and her father.
It's a bit Old Testament, isn't it?
Yeah, an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you pause, right?
Definitely. It makes you think, is revenge ever truly satisfying?
Right.
Does it heal old wounds?
Yeah.
Or just create new ones?
Exactly. Hope believed he was acting righteously, delivering this frontier justice. But in doing so, he became a mirror image of the very forces he sought to punish.
He became the very thing he hated.
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle of violence.
It is a never-ending cycle.
Each act of revenge perpetuating the cycle.
Exactly.
And it really highlights the clash between individual morality and the rules of society.
Right, because Hope was operating under a different code.
He was. A frontier code where survival often meant taking justice into your own hands.
Yeah, it was a kill-or-be-killed world.
Exactly. And that code clashes with the more structured legal system.
Of Victorian London.
Of Victorian London, right?
Yeah.
And Doyle presents these two competing systems without judgment.
He just lays it out there.
Yeah, and leaves us to grapple with those complexities of justice.
It's up to the reader to decide.
And the consequences of choosing vengeance over the rule of law.
Right, because both have their pros and cons.
What's striking is how Doyle uses setting to reflect these contrasting ideologies.
Oh, it's interesting.
London, with its fog and gaslight, represents that order, logic.
Yeah, the pursuit of justice through established means.
Exactly. And the American West, vast and unforgiving, embodies this wilder, more primal sense of justice.
Right, where survival is paramount.
Yeah.
And retribution is often swift and brutal.
Exactly. And Hope, caught between those two worlds, really embodies that conflict.
Yeah, he's a product of both.
He is. So as we close this deep dive into A Study in Scarlet, we're left with more questions than answers.
Yeah, that's how Doyle likes to leave us.
Yeah, he does. Was Hope justified in his actions? Can revenge ever truly bring peace?
Those are questions that we're still grappling with today.
We are. It's what makes this book so timeless.
Absolutely. And it's what makes Doyle such a brilliant writer.
He is. He gives us this gripping mystery.
Yeah.
But it's also a story that challenges our assumptions. Explores the dark side of human nature.
It does.
And leaves us pondering these enduring questions of justice, revenge, and the price of freedom.
It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It does. And so, A Study in Scarlet is more than just a thrilling detective story.
Oh, it's so much more.
It's a story that really makes us think.
About ourselves and the world we live in.
Exactly. It's about those big questions that we all face.
And it's just the beginning of Sherlock Holmes' extraordinary adventures.
It is. So if you're ready to delve deeper into that world of deduction, mystery, and the brilliant mind of Sherlock Holmes...
Keep those little gray cells working.
Yes, exactly. I encourage you to explore the rest of the canon.
There are so many more cases to solve.
There are. Until next time, the game is always afoot.